Here we have a depiction of the final act from slave Kullervo before he takes his own life. He tells to his sword that it has swallowed the blood of the innocent, and now it can have some blood of the guilty. His magical sword replies in all-knowing manner that it wouldn't mind to drink the blood of the guilty and eat the flesh of the guilty eater. His sword does not show sympathy for Kullervo, but gladly agrees to absolve him from his tormenting guilt. Very dark conclusion for a man that has been troubled through his life. How did Kullervo end up as a slave? His background is the most excellent one in the ancient Finno-Ugrian world. He is a direct male descendant from the giant called Kaleva. That means his heritage is basically noble in some sense, because he is a son of Kaleva. He can trace his heritage to the first giants that roamed this land and left these strange shapes in the local nature. So his right to rule is given to the local population. Although he comes from one of these great houses of giants, his father Kullervo runs into conflict with the foreign tribe of Untamo. Some poems tell that these clans share same mother's line, and Untamo and Kullervo are basically half-brothers. Ancient world of Finns is built on patriarchal clans, unfortunately, so this close family connection does not create any sympathy between the tribes. Conflicts arise between these rivaling factors. Some poems add different nuances to the situation. Kullervo either breaks some important nests in the hunting ground or steals back fishes that Untamo tribe has fished from their waters. And there was a goat that ate from the wrong field or something like that. It is a conflict of resources basically that happens, and no amend can be made to correct the situation. But what happens next is depicted quite clearly in the poems. Tribe of Untamo unleash total slaughter to Kullervo's tribe. They only leave one pregnant servant maid alive, or in some versions, Kullervo as a young child. I think the maid part is a very interesting version to this poem, because it makes Kullervo an illegitimate child even in his own tribe, although in technical sense a true carrier of his father's noble bloodline, since he is the last one to remain. Kullervo is depicted as a beautiful man wearing fancy blue socks in many poems to showcase his noble stature. He becomes a slave for his half-uncle and showcases his enormous power of the giants early on. In some versions he even speaks few days old how he is not a fatherless child, but a rightful ruler of the land. He apparently broke free from the tight swaddling that children were usually wrapped as newborns. After seeing this feat of strength, immediately the surrounding slaves try to kill him with swords, but the infant just laughs at their attempts. When they try to burn him in a bonfire, he is found sitting in the charcoal like nothing has happened. His drowning attempt is similarly anticlimactic. When they try to hang him and come back to look for him in the following day, he is found carving around his hanging tree without a care in the world. Already, this child is waiting to grow into full stature so he can take revenge against his masters. When Untamo can't seem to kill him, they see great potential in this powerful slave and test him in several jobs. He proves to be useless in many tasks that he is assigned to. For example, when he is made to look after a child, he actually eats the child that was supposed to be looked after in some versions. As a lumberjack, he asks the smith to turn his tool into a war axe and basically ruins the timber and woods by breaking them into small pieces. As a builder, he is made to raise a fence for the cattle. He basically builds a perfect fort wall that reaches to the clouds, not very suitable for animal husbandry. When he works in the fields, he basically harvests the crops with such haste that there is nothing left but the chaffs of the grains. He is eventually sold or made to leave the house of Untamo. He ends up in far north and is made to be a shepherd for the cattle. Some versions this is another attempt to kill him in hopes that wolves would eat him. Being a shepherd is a lonely task, but not a back-breaking one like plowing the fields. Kullervo is asking time to move faster and to release him from this position of oppression. The birds of nature speak to him. They guide him forward in the story. Change comes in the act of pure sadism. The wife of the household prepares him food for his long cattle run. She bakes him a bread with stone inside of it. This is Kullervo's breaking point. His family knife breaks while cutting the bread. There is nothing else to remind him about his family. He runs the cattle to the swamp or feeds it to the beasts of the forest, basically destroying the whole fortune. This is a quite insane act, and it is like burning money in the present day. He makes a horn from the bones of a cow and calls beasts to the house and orders them to ransack it, and especially to eat the evil ugly lady of the house. In some versions, he managed to exchange a brief dialogue with the lady and tells her to do his work for him. When she goes to look her cattle, she finds wolves and bears where cattle should be. They both plead for Thunder God to take their side on this matter. Poem always ends in lady of the house getting eaten by the animals, so I guess Thunder God is on Kullervo's side at this point of the story. Kullervo wonders and moans about his existence to God. Why is he here on this earth? Suddenly, a mysterious lady stops this monologue and tells him that his father and mother are still alive and directs him to their new house. Kullervo travels to his lost home and finds out this to be true, which is interesting since the first poem describes how everyone from his tribe, child to elder, was killed. But let's focus on this dramatic point and not on the plot hole itself. Kullervo has a new chance ahead of him. Kullervo has 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Brother was lost in some great war, and one sister has been missing for a while. He once again tries to work in the household, but he fails in every daily task because he is too passionate and not raised properly. Fishes turn into dust in his hands, and boats break when he tries to row them. He has not acquired any skills for labor that children usually acquire when working in their households. When he is sent to pay taxes for some unknown lord, he meets a lonely woman on skis. He starts to lure her to come on his sledge. After 3 failed attempts in flirting, he results into stealing her anyway. This woman still resists, but Kullervo has a final trick on his sleeve. He opens the chest of silver that he was carrying to showcase how well off he is. The woman suddenly changes her mind, and the ride turns into a passionate joyride. In the following morning, woman asks who this man is. He introduces himself from a family that is not small, but not big either. After hearing this, the woman tells that she comes from the same family and is her little sister that got lost while gathering berries and has been trying to find home ever since that. After telling her story, she jumps out of the sledge and runs into the underground river of the dead and drowns herself into it. Kullervo is shocked and can't bear to exist. He returns to tell the tale to their mother. He weeps and wishes that her mother would have suffocated him right after giving birth to him in sauna. His mother tells him to travel far away and let time heal his wounds. Self-exile for 9 years at best. Kullervo refuses this plan. He knows another way to drown his guilt. He will take revenge against Untamo, and by a snap of his fingers, he calls for war. There are long poems how Kullervo's mother tries to reason with him and even ask him would he not feel guilt for causing a destruction, to which Kullervo replies no. He neither showcases any worry of what will happen to his family members after his death. Kullervo himself asks from his father, brother and sister if they will cry for him if he will die in the battlefield. They say no, and reply that they can make a better son or brother after him. To these blunt remarks, Kullervo tells that he can make himself a father, brother and sister from moss and branches. When he asks for material help, then each of them gives a weapon or piece of armor for him, for his personal war. So I guess they give some approval for the coming raid. There are many versions of how Kullervo receives his sword, but apparently Thunder God himself presents him with this main weapon. Kullervo rides to war, and during his journey he receives messages how each member of his family dies one after another. He shows great disrespect to them and shows no care for their memory and burial, until he hears about his mother's death, which he truly laments, It is his mother who told him that she would feel sorrow if Kullervo would perish. He of course continues his journey to fulfill his ultimate revenge on the tribe of Untamo. They are naturally wiped away from the face of the earth. He returns home and finds his homestead being unkept. The cold stones of Sauna tell him that his father is gone. The bridge is full of dust because his sister has not cleaned it. The fishing boat is on the shore because his brother is not here anymore. And most importantly, the fireplace, the most sacred place on the house, is not lit because his mother is not here anymore. He asks what to do next, and his mother from the grave guides him to go hunt with the remaining family dog to the forest. He follows this advice, but in the forest he runs into the place where he laid down with his own sister. Although the place blossoms with life, Kullervo feels that this is where it all came to an end, and here we receive his final act. He dives into his sword. If he was a demigod, an immortal giant, then he is not that anymore. I have spoken before about this oral tale of the slave Kullervo. It is quite remarkable in its human depth and understanding of a man. Epic poetry is most of the time quite monotone with its amoral heroes, but Kullervo's story is like a Greek tragedy. Researchers say that literacy and the rising written code of law turned epic oral tales in Athens into a more refined format that we know them today. Drama had rich characters and plots being more nuanced and interesting. One can see the argument when comparing works of Homer to the new tragedies of the theater. But this story was never written down. It was epic oral tale, but it is a story arc, and themes make me wonder if it has received some influences from the Greek writers, or that the roots of the tragedy were already in the ancient history before written language could help to conceptualize these stories better. There is existential dread in this hero that is quite sophisticated in its verses, where he deals with quite heavy moral questions. Kullervo appears in many lighter stories as a side character or sharing common role from other Finnish heroes, but his main poems are pretty similar in themes. Slavery was not a moral problem for the Greeks, so slave story like this was not for their taste. Mongolian secret history, for example, tells how Temujin was a slave for several years before his rise to the title of Great Khan. It is interesting parallel how Kullervo himself only manages to be a successful warlord and fails to maintain anything more life-affirming role in his community. He is just an empty vessel for revenge. For me, I have to mirror it towards the coming Christianity. These themes are very fascinating. There is obviously a lesson to be learned from here, why Christian mythology found a place in men's heart. Cain and Abel are the same family line, and so is all mankind. When we kill each other, we are basically killing our brothers and sisters. This is what Kullervo and Untamo are doing, because they were basically from the same kinship. Most of all, slavery is not depicted here in any light fashion or as natural position of a man. Then all this existential anguish that the warrior feels after acting on his revenge. And let us not forget this taboo relationship with his own sister. Like I have said before, there was need for justice, and I understand why this carpenter from Nazareth managed to answer to this story. But Kullervo lived in another time, and instead of forgiveness, he only heard the cold metallic answer of suicide as the only real answer for the questions that has been raised.